All right. So, on this episode of Empowering Her, I have special guest Marlene. Marlene, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge and experience with us.
Of course, happy to be here.
Let's do a kind of a deep dive on your background here. Let's talk about the role you're in right now and kind of that journey to get there.
Yeah. Wow. My journey to get to the role that I am in now is crazy. So I graduated from a really small town outside of Denver, about three and a half, 4 hours south of Denver. It's called Alamosa. I graduated from a high school called Alamosa High School back in 2019. I'm showing my age here. And after graduating, I entered the working world. And my first job was at a bank in downtown Denver. I was 19. I was a teller. I loved speaking with people, loved helping in any way that I could. And I just knew that I just wasn't in the right career. And I knew that there was so much more for me. But I just didn't know where to start. So after a couple years in the banking world, I decided to change careers, and I reached out to a what do you call it? A temp agency,
Okay. Yes.
and I was able to get my foot in the door into the technology world. And when I got my first job in the tech world, I got my foot in the door and like knowing how to how to do operations, manage the whole like Latin American territory for the renewals department, and make lifelong friendships and connections. That's when I started to build my LinkedIn and started to make those real connections. Um, and after 3 years or so at the company, I left and I was hired at a consultancy company for 11 months. And it's hard. Consultancy work is probably some of the toughest work I've ever done, and it's not for me. So I soon realized that that was not the journey that I wanted to take. And I quickly changed directions in career paths. And uh, another technology company called Circle CI reached out to me. And that's where my life really, really changed. It took a really big turn for the better. Um, I finally, I finally said, I remember doing like the little happy dance when they offered the job to me in sales. And I remember thinking like, yes, my foot is officially in the door and this is it. I'm in the technology world. This is great. Um, I was I was one of the first females to get hired in the Denver office. So I
Okay.
was able to set that tone for the culture. And I was able to travel a lot. This is pre COVID, by the way. So they really cared for me there and they really wanted me to succeed. Um, Once I got out of sales and into a leadership role, I knew that that's where I belong, is to
Right.
help others in their career journey. Um,
Okay.
and with every candidate that I interviewed and I helped build that team, I saw my old 19-year-old self twinkle in their eye, hungry to learn, no guidance, with zero direction of where the next current's going to take them. And I definitely wanted to help bridge that gap in people and mentor. So being a being a minority in the technology space, I definitely want to pave the way for other women. So yeah.
I think that's really really important because when you see those that when you can see yourself in other people or those that kind of resemble you and you see them being successful, that encourages you and you can go, okay, I can do that too. So I think that's awesome. And I'm really glad that you're on here to share that because that is the whole purpose of this show. And so let's break down kind of your day to day activities that, in a way that my eighth graders would kind of go, ah, I get it.
Yeah. So I manage a team of five.
Okay.
So my day to day varies depending on the day. So typically, like on a Monday, I would hop on a morning sync with them, no more than 15 minutes, just because the average attention span of a human is no more than that. So definitely don't want people to stay on for a 30-minute meeting. That can be cut down to half. So um and during this 15-minute meeting, like, we talk about sports, celebrity drama, any company updates, what everyone did for the weekend. It's that time that I get to bond with my team.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, I really, really cherish those teeny little 15-minute moments. After that, I hop on other meetings, like syncing with marketing, making sure that our products are aligned, making sure that our campaigns are ready to launch. Um, and then after that, I have one-on-ones with each individual team member. So I manage a team of 5, so that's 30 minutes each. And also a one-on-one with my boss, leadership. And in between those meetings, I answer the team's questions. I also have people that are brand new that are onboarding. So I have to carve out a little bit more time to handhold those reps, which is fine.
Mhm.
Um, and then carving out some time to recruit for my team. So building out this team is a goal of mine. So 5 is just the start.
So you are really, you've kind of taken that expertise as you've come up through selling, and now you are doing a lot of coaching and mentoring to make sure, to bring out their best. If you don't mind me asking, what product does your company sell?
Yeah, so I work for people.ai and we sell intelligent data.
Okay. Okay. Love it. Um, my internship right now in marketing is actually with the data company. So, or data, however, everybody says it a little bit different. Well, and I think that's awesome. And I take it you're working remote, because like one question quite a number of my students have was, is the job remote? Because they kind of want to travel, um, and is your whole team remote also?
Yes, right now our team is remote. I work for a really small startup, around 200 to 250 people.
Okay.
Um, my so I manage out here in Colorado. My team is based out of Colorado. So I'm trying to get a shared workspace here started so we can all have a chance to at least meet twice a week. But we also have to handle budget for that. So I've been in conversations with HR about that. But yeah, that's in the works. So hopefully soon.
Okay, and so then another huge question that always gets asked is, how much money do they make? So let's look at the salary ranges from like the SDR, BDR role, which would be that entry level, up to say like AE, to kind of that footstep of the ladder and kind of the salary range that goes with it.
Yeah. So for BDRs and SDRs, it varies. It just depends on which company you go with, how large the team is, how much funding the company has had. But typically, I see between 80 to 90K OTE for to start a BDR. Um, and then for an AE role, that also varies. It's between 100 to 200K OTE, depending on senior level, quota obtainment. I've seen enterprise reps go and buy the latest model of Tesla because they hit their quota 100-fold. So the world is your oyster when you're in AE. It's definitely an uncapped quota, so you can make a lot of money there.
And for your role, or within sales, that one is one that does not require a college degree, correct?
It does not. It helps.
Okay.
Not something that I typically will uh, like. I won't not reach out to you if you don't have one. If that makes sense.
Right, right.
It does help though, because when you're in a candidate pool of 50, it does make you stand out. But when you're not, it's not going to hurt you.
Okay, gotcha. So, and that is, some of these careers that we look at are just like amazing that you can almost, if you were driven enough, step out of high school and then within a couple years, if you did well, you're making six figures a year. And that's life changing money. And so, and I love that we're seeing these, because that is a role that I think is, unless you stumble on it, like you don't like find it until way later. And then a friend of mine, Dominic, he's a vice president of sales, and he was telling me, he's like, why did I not know about like the SDR to AE role a
Yeah.
long time ago? He's like, I've got some 24-year-olds that are making six figures, and it's
Oh
ridiculous.
yeah. You kick yourself when you learn that when it's too late, but it's fine. We're in it now, so.
Right. And also, would you say, because one of the questions we always get, like when I was growing up, I wanted to be a marine biologist, right? And then I went to go look at the job market, and there's a lot of unemployed marine biologists. So within sales, are there a lot of opportunities?
Oh my goodness. So my husband is actually he wanted to do that. He wanted to be a marine biologist, and he is doing data. He's in an analytics role
Okay.
in the technology space. So it's kind of funny. I like to jab at him a little bit on that
Yeah.
because he went to school for a very long time, and he's doing what I'm doing is in technology. So. Um, Sorry, what was your question?
No. Um, so what would be, and I know this depends, what would be the kind of the pros and cons of being with a startup versus a larger company? Because that's like a question that usually comes up. So, in your opinion, your experience, what would be the difference between the two? Is pros and cons of both?
Yeah, pros and cons. Startup is you get to really grow the business, build a team and grow the business and from the ground up. And you can definitely speak to that in your future interviews. And you get to learn very, very quickly because it is a startup. There's not a lot of processes in play. You get to map those out and you get to put that on your resume. Like I mapped out XYZ process. It brought this much pipeline, helped onboard this many reps. So, yeah, those are the pros. Cons, of course, there's a little bit of high turnover with startups just because some startups just don't make it. They don't get the proper funding. It's a little bit riskier. So if you're going to start at a startup, my only advice is to start where they have employee sizes around 200, so that it's a little bit safer. Uh, yeah, and then for a company, I mean, I worked for Accenture, which is huge consultancy company, and there wasn't a lot of um, because it was bigger, there wasn't a lot of opportunity for growth. And when there was, it was very, very competitive. I was competing against 20, 25 other people that wanted the same role. Um, it's very competitive, not a lot of growth, but you do get that um, cushion that the company is more stable.
So, here's an interesting question, and I never thought I would get this from one of my students, which is, and they're very career oriented even at being 13 years old, and it's a question I think a lot of people have. So if I have a student of mine that's like, I want to do sales and I want to like grow that path, and so they start going to interviews, and I know within the sales world you can step into companies that really thrive like you're doing, where you're educating and you're coaching, and some companies are like, get on the phone and do 150 dials a day, and and that. So when they're looking for companies that are really going to coach and nurture them to bring out the best because you want them to succeed, what are maybe one or two questions they can ask in an interview process to know if that's a good company?
Yeah, great question. I would ask the person. I would do a little bit of stalking on the interviewer and ask the person why they left. It's always nice to see their answer as to why they left, get to see like what research they did. Also, the company culture. You definitely want to ask on culture, and you want to ask on growth. So on LinkedIn, you can peek on their analytics page the growth of every single team, engineering, sales, marketing. Have they increased? Has they decreased? Why? So you can do your own little research there and call it out in interviews. Don't be scared. You can say, yeah, your sales department has decreased by 3% in the last 6 months. Can you elaborate a little bit more about that? Like, can you tell me a little bit more? These are really good questions to ask a interviewer. It'll put them in the spot for sure.
Well, and that's a great question because I was like, part of sales is trying to figure out kind of what those pain points are, and
Mhm.
you can provide that solution. So I think that question would have like that twofold benefit of, number one, you get an answer, and then whoever's hiring you go, wow, okay, we need this person
Yep.
because they're speaking the language.
Yeah, they did their research and they're asking out of the box questions.
Well, beautiful. So, when you are going to hire somebody, what
Yep.
qualities, soft skills, do you look for that makes a good salesperson?
I love that question. So at every role that I do, I look for 5 things. So the first is organization, because you cannot do this job without being organized. I have seen some of the best salespeople um, just not do well because they're not organized with their book of business. They're not organized with who they're talking to, replying back, who they're calling. They don't take notes, etc. So organization is key. Um, in regards to curiosity, someone that's hungry to learn, values growth, someone that adapts very quickly to change is something I would. Oh, do you have a dog?
Yeah.
I recognize the noise. I have two
Yeah.
little sleepers here. Um, so my third one would be adapts quickly to change. Just because in the technology space, we're constantly evolving, constantly changing, whether it's changing prices, changing the user seats in something, changing the material, the platform, etc. Um, and we need somebody that can adapt to change fairly quickly. Is a natural teacher. This one is very, very important. So the reason why I look for a natural teacher, and I ask certain questions that allow them to answer, like, have you mentored anyone in the past? Like, how have you helped a rep in need? Um, whether it was a school or a job. Um, so a natural teacher is the key for a technology job. Just because when you want to learn something so well, you want to teach it. So that's what I look for. And also a culture fit. This one is very hard because I have gotten this one wrong time and time again, but learning and growing from it. I don't want someone that wants to be a BDR for 10 years without wanting to grow and leave.
Right.
I always bring this example up with candidates that I interview, but I actually interviewed one candidate. This was years ago, and he wanted to be a BDR for the rest of his life. And I just didn't understand that. I could not wrap my head around why you wanted to be a BDR forever and not get to step two.
Right.
So that's not someone that's a good culture fit. That's someone that's gonna ruin the culture for sure. So those are the 5 things I look for.
Okay. So, with mentors, how important do you think it is to find mentors? I like that sigh.
Extremely. It's extremely important. One thing that I wish I would have done sooner was create a LinkedIn for myself and start to build those connections, meet with people, ask for a mentorship early on. Of course, I do that. So, but the sooner the better. And in regards to like approaching somebody for a mentorship, that's where LinkedIn also comes in handy. So, following somebody that inspires you, or that you know very well in a current company or school, because I too have um, been inspired by teachers. So, definitely wouldn't mind to have that, have a teacher mentor me. So, but taking the time to craft that email or craft up a good conversation on what you're looking for in a mentorship can mean all the difference. I haven't had anyone say no to me yet
Okay.
on LinkedIn, so I hope that it doesn't disappoint younger folks. But creating a LinkedIn very
Okay.
early on helps, and start building those connections. Connect with people that are in the VP, CMO level. Um, the more connections, the better. And then just start following people that are very well known, like Tony Robbins. I follow him.
Beautiful. All right. So here's a hot seat question for you. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And this doesn't have to, the answer doesn't have to be related to education or profession, it can
Okay.
be anything. Okay. So knowing what you know now, if you could give your middle school to high school self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Um, one piece of advice I would give would be, do not rely on anyone. Rely on yourself. Um, because especially being a woman, we get into, toxic relationships. We get into all sorts of stuff that's not necessarily good for our mental health.
Right.
And you heavily rely on these relationships to work out, and these people to help you out in your career, but that doesn't happen, and you end up giving versus helping yourself out. So that's something I would definitely emphasize on. Don't rely on anyone. Rely on yourself.
I like that because if you give and give and give, eventually you are gived out and
Yep.
you can create a lot of resentment. So I think that's just an absolute beautiful piece of advice. All right. Well, Marlene, I just can't thank you enough for coming on and like just sharing that wisdom and that knowledge, and like you have a wonderful, wonderful, rich history and a story, and I think it's just fantastic, and I just can't thank you enough.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And we will be in touch very, very soon.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.